News at 6 today, the investigation continues into the murders of legendary actor, producer, and director Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle.
I watched Nick shouting inches from his father's face. Those were Conan O'Brien's words when he finally spoke about what unfolded between Rob Reiner and his son at Conan's own Christmas party. At the time, it registered as uncomfortable, awkward, a moment people hoped would pass. Only later did it become clear it was something else entirely. No one in that room understood what they were witnessing. It didn't look like a tragedy beginning. It looked like a private family conflict that had spilled into a public space. A tense exchange that felt out of place, but not yet alarming. The weight of it only arrived afterward, when everything else came into focus. From the moment Nick arrived, he didn't merge into the room. While guests drifted into easy conversations, hugging friends and settling into the familiar warmth of Conan's home, Nick stayed separate. He didn't anchor himself anywhere. He moved slowly, deliberately, circling the edges as if present in body but not in spirit. At first, his comments were scattered, hard to follow. People assumed nerves, maybe too much pressure, maybe discomfort. But then something shifted. The fragments sharpened. His focus narrowed. And suddenly, all of that attention was fixed on his father. Whispers moved through the room. Uneasy looks were exchanged. This isn't right. He's frightening people. The mood collapsed almost instantly. Music, decorations, laughter, all faded into the background as something far more serious took over the space. One of Hollywood's most respected families was unraveling in front of witnesses. For years, Conan O'Brien's Christmas party had been known as a rare refuge. No press, no phones, no quiet deals. Conan protected that atmosphere fiercely, creating a space where people could lower their guard without fear. Guests remembered it clearly. Pine in the air. Drinks poured slowly. Stories told without calculation. Hollywood without armor. That night, the illusion shattered. On December 14th, 2025, just one day later, Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead in their home. The news landed like a shockwave, freezing Hollywood in place. Within hours, the focus narrowed to one name, Nick. From that moment on, the memory of the Christmas party changed shape. It was no longer remembered as warm or festive. It became evidence. Every glance, every pause, every exchange re-examined for warnings that only made sense after the fact. That shift is why Conan O'Brien eventually spoke. Not as a performer holding court, but as someone choosing each word with care. Those who heard him said his voice was measured, restrained, as if he had rehearsed silence longer than speech. He traced the unraveling back to a single moment, the instant the door opened and Rob Reiner walked in with Michelle and Nick beside him. Several guests later described the same sensation. The room didn't fall silent. No one reacted outwardly. But something changed. The atmosphere thinned, like warmth quietly draining away. Rob offered the familiar smile he'd worn for decades, polite and automatic. But it didn't settle. It flickered, then disappeared. It felt reflexive, not joyful. From the start, Conan said Rob never fully relaxed. He didn't gravitate toward friends. His eyes didn't rest. Instead, they moved constantly, scanning rather than enjoying. He didn't arrive like someone ready to celebrate. He arrived like someone containing a problem, working to keep it from spilling out. As conversations formed in small clusters, attention drifted toward Nick. He stood apart. He moved deliberately through the room, slow and controlled. His gaze passed over faces without lingering. Later, several guests said it didn't feel like being watched. It felt like being assessed, as though he were sorting people according to a private logic no one else could see. At one point, Nick stopped in front of a familiar comedian. There was no greeting, no easing in, just two questions delivered evenly. Who are you? Are you famous? There was no edge in his voice, no visible agitation, and that's what unsettled people. It didn't sound curious. It sounded purposeful, like he was stripping the room of meaning. Rob noticed. He didn't step in right away. He didn't interrupt. But someone standing near him saw his grip tighten around his glass until his knuckles blanched. That was the moment things crossed a line. This wasn't social discomfort. It was fear. The kind that hits when a parent realizes the familiar ways of managing, calming, redirecting are no longer working. Love. Authority, reputation, none of it was working anymore. As the night went on, the strain stopped hiding. Nick never raised his voice. What drew attention wasn't volume, it was restraint. His tone was measured, broken into careful pieces, each word placed on purpose. Then he faced his father directly, abandoning any remaining pretense of distance. "You keep talking about family values," he said calmly. "But everything's already set up for the people you've decided matter." Rob froze for a beat, then answered too quickly, like someone replaying an argument he knew by heart. According to Conan, Rob didn't sound like a director steering a room. He sounded worn down. "Nick, not now. We've already been through this." His voice carried familiarity, not authority. Nick pressed forward. He spoke about money, about control, about decisions made without him. Guests close enough heard fragments, references to paperwork, a will, assets, authority placed in hands he didn't trust. And then came the sentence that emptied the room of air. "You're getting ready for a world without me." You always have. No one could say how much of that belief matched reality, or how long it had lived inside him. But what was clear was this wasn't improvised. These weren't fresh wounds. They were old, layered, carried quietly for years and released in the worst possible place. Michelle tried to step in. She touched Nick's arm, her voice low, almost imploring. "Not here. Please." He turned toward her, and witnesses said his expression shifted so suddenly she recoiled without thinking. In that small step back, people understood something had crossed a line. Rob stopped trying to guide the exchange. Logic failed. Familiar affection failed. He stood listening as every tool he relied on collapsed. Conan later said he couldn't recall exact phrases. What stayed with him was the sensation. This wasn't an argument. It was pressure. One person forcing the others into a corner where every response felt wrong. No one intervened. Not from indifference, but paralysis. Once a private boundary breaks in public, there's no clear way back. The moment didn't resolve. It drained. Nick turned away first. Michelle followed, visibly shaken. And the room never recovered. Rob stood frozen for a few seconds, as if his body needed proof that what had just happened was real. A longtime friend stepped closer and rested a hand on his shoulder. Rob leaned in and spoke barely above a breath. "I'm scared. I don't know what he'll do next." There was no anger in it. No irritation. Just exhaustion and fear. When the Reiner family finally left the party, no one escorted them out. There were no hugs. No polite farewells. The silence stayed behind, heavy, long after they vanished down the path. One guest later said it felt like watching someone exit a bright room and step into darkness, with no idea what waited beyond the door. When Conan later spoke about that moment, he stopped for a long time before continuing. His eyes welled. What hurt most, he said, wasn't the confrontation itself. It was that he had heard that fear before. After past parties ended and the house emptied, Conan and Rob would sometimes sit together quietly. No audience. No jokes. Rob wasn't a man who talked much, but whenever Nick came up, his tone always shifted. He spoke about treatment attempts. About optimism that seemed close enough to touch, then vanished again. He never spoke with resentment. He spoke carefully, like even a careless sentence might make things worse. The fear Conan recognized wasn't the fear of a public figure losing control. It was the fear of a father realizing his child was slipping beyond reach. Rob once said, almost to himself, that being a parent in that position breaks you slowly. You want to protect your child, but eventually you understand that the final choices aren't yours. So when Rob whispered, "I'm scared" on Christmas night, it wasn't sudden. It was the echo of years of warning signs, visible but too painful to confront head-on. Later information filled in what many people hadn't known. Nick had struggled with addiction for years, cycling through multiple treatment attempts. Those close to him said he also faced serious mental health challenges and growing instability in the weeks before everything collapsed. His medication had reportedly been adjusted shortly before the tragedy. Experts say that period can be volatile, affecting perception and impulse control. Family friends described Nick as increasingly tense, distrustful, convinced that everything was being taken from him. Not just money, but belonging. Authorities had reportedly responded to the home multiple times over the years for safety concerns. Each time, things calmed down, but the risk never truly disappeared. Investigators took a close look at Nick's actions in the hours surrounding the incident. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station showed him composed, unhurried, calmly purchasing a drink and speaking politely. That composure unsettled experts. It suggested distance, not disarray. Reports indicate he moved using public transportation, followed deliberate routes, and avoided drawing attention while checking into a hotel. Investigators also noted small but striking details, like windows covered with bedsheets, subtle choices that implied awareness of observation. Even if not every element is fully confirmed, the sequence sharpened the core question. How much control was lost, and how much was still firmly intact? Nick is currently being held under strict supervision. In court, he appeared withdrawn, dressed in a suicide prevention gown, offering little more than a quiet "Yes, Your Honor" when addressed. The next hearing has been delayed to allow for mental competency evaluations. For the public, it's a procedural update. For those left behind, it's time suspended, a wound that hasn't begun to close. What makes this story unsettling isn't only what followed. It's what existed long before. When Conan finally spoke, he didn't expose a secret or spark a scandal. He revealed something far more difficult to accept. The signs were there, clear, persistent, and still, no one knew how to interrupt what was unfolding. The investigation continues and many questions remain unanswered, but one truth lingers with disturbing clarity. On that Christmas night, in a space meant to feel safe and warm, fear was already present, waiting to be seen. If this story stayed with you, please like, share, and subscribe, and stay with us for more stories that reveal what silence tries to hide.